Welcome back. So we're going to follow on from yesterday, and as you remember, we did some stuff here and here, which was basically loading some fonts, the Google fonts that we kind of picked from here. Now, I haven't changed this since what we ended up at the end of the video because I actually like it. I think it's nice. I think this needs to be a little bit bigger, but apart from that, this needs to be in capitals. And rather than retyping it, I thought maybe I'll show you some CSS that can do some transformation things to your text, which I thought is kind of cool. And we need to kind of put it in here. But what I'll do is I'll show you the text transform description. So this is on the CSS Tricks website, which we've been to before. This is Chris Coyer's one. I'm hoping you guys checked out his video that I posted a week or two ago. And here's the code. Text transform lowercase as an example. And also we can change it to be uppercase as a value. So these are all showing the different values that we can replace this orange bit with. So we can have lowercase, uppercase, capitalize, none, and inherit. These are some demos below here so you can see what that looks like. So it's the same text just getting changed. And so what we're going to do is we're going to grab the text transform lowercase, go over here, and because we're going to put it into the H1, we're going to add it in at the end of that. So then we're going to go to live view, and now it's all lowercase. So we just change that to be uppercase, and then we can go to live view and it's all uppercase. So it's kind of cool things that you can do with CSS. So that way you can always write the headings as if you were, writing it normally, and then you can worry about how you're going to style it later on. So those are just kind of cool little things that you can think about. I'm just going to make the font size for this one a little bit bigger while we're here before I forget. Let's see if that's too big. No, that's right. That works. So what we've got now is Amazing Animals. Please click the thumbnails to see some awesome photos. We've got our two fonts. If we go back, we've got a sketch somewhere. So we've got click to explore, and then we had the little kind of words below it. So I'm just going to change this to click to explore. We haven't centered any of these yet. But one of the other things that we haven't done is we haven't made that a circle yet, right? And as images go, all images are always going to be squares. You're always going to save off a square. And if you go into your background here, actually let me just do this. I don't like it when CSS is this messy, so I'm just going to put these on separate lines, put the squigglies on a separate line, do the same here. That's a font size, it's on a separate line. Bring that one back, put it down. There we go. So if we go in here and we say background color is going to be yellow, for example. I'll take yellow away, but for the moment just so we can see it. That's the yellow background. That's entire page being changed to yellow. But the circle effect, I can't really achieve that with anything except a PNG, and for that I need to go over to Photoshop. So let's just do that. When we're in here, we've got the big picture that we wanted to have. Now I could obviously grab the whole thing, and let's grab the elliptical marquee tool and try and grab all of them. I don't think that's an effective thumbnail. I think a more effective thumbnail is to zoom in on the action here on these three guys. So what I'll do for that is I'll just make that circle. Now if you don't want to make an oval, this is just Photoshop, you just hold down shift, and shift makes sure that the circle is just a perfect circle. You can do it by locking it and doing some other magic, but let's just focus on this. You can also click on the edge of the circle once you've drawn it and move it so that you can position it where you want it to be. And if you need to nudge it, you use the keyboard keys to arrow up, arrow down, left, right, and you can just nudge it into position. So then what I think that will be a good image. So what we'll do is we'll copy that. Photoshop's kind of cool. When you do new, I like it anyway, it figures out the dimensions on the clipboard of how big that should be. So what it's done for us, it said, look, this is a 234 by 234 because you've just cropped that part of the image. Do you want to use what you've just cropped? And I say, yes, I do. Go in here, paste that in, and in the layers, I don't want that background. I want to see the checkered pattern, because if I don't get rid of that and I save this off as an image, what's going to happen is I'm not going to be able to see through it. So I need to make sure that the checkered pattern's there. Same thing with the image export. So if I'm going to go up to the Safe4Web Legacy one again, which I've shown you guys before. The checkered pattern there is see-through, right? That just means that we can see through that area of the image. But if we have the background on, or we forget that the background's on there, when you go into here, you won't be able to see the checkered pattern anyway. The other thing I want to point out is if you do see the checkered pattern, that means you're either on a GIF or on a PNG. Now, ideally PNG 24, so it's nice smooth. If you go to JPEG, however, the white comes back because JPEGs don't know how to make an invisible part of an image. So you can struggle as much as you want, but as far as I know, there's no way to make a JPEG have some transparency. So you just need to go to PNG and then do that. Now the reason I say PNG 24 is your only option is because of the edge. The edge here, if you go to a GIF, becomes very sharp. And what happens is it bleeds over this matte color. So if you pick a matte color like red, this is what happens. That matte color gets bled out onto it. Happens with PNG 8 as well. Doesn't happen with PNG 24. So the reason I say use PNG 24 is because if you still haven't made up your mind on your actual background color, the PNG 24 will let that sit anywhere. Whereas if you go with a GIF, yes, the file size will be smaller, but you're going to have to pick the correct color that you're going to blend into. So in our case, it would be that yellow, and it would add that yellow tint around the whole edge of the image. So then if you changed your mind on what color the edge should be, or sorry, the background image should be, you would have to re-export this image. So I really recommend that you kind of stick to PNG 24, get that done, and then you can save it out. So let's just go back into our images, and let's call this the King Penguin circle. And that gives us that first kind of image to work with. So what we'll do is we'll just go back in here, go back to our design view, and we'll double click that image so that we can then ask Dreamweaver to swap it out for another image. Now if you still haven't inserted an image for whatever reason, you can just go insert image from the menu somewhere, wherever it is. There it is. And you'll be able to insert a new image. So if you needed to have the second one in there, you can do that. But I get lazy, I just copy and paste this, and then I'll swap these two out just by double clicking on them. But we haven't got the tiger and we haven't got the elephant yet, so we won't worry about them yet. But that's, look, to get us to this point is great, and it'll give you an idea of whether you like this kind of circle thing. If you want, you can get more fancy. You can go in here. What could we do that's more fancy? We could transform this on a 45-degree angle. We could move it up, maybe here, and then we could mask that. Right, so we could add a mask. So you get this little cut, and that could be more fancy. So we could export that as a more fancy one. And we'll call it King Penguins, not circle, but fancy. And then we can go back to Dreamweaver, copy and paste this guy over, replace him with the fancy one, and compare. You know, do we like the fancy one? Do we like the normal one? Play around with how you want to bring your thumbnails to life. You can add borders around them if you want. So you can go back in here and say, well, how about I have a border around this whole thing. So you can do that. Go in, let's just get rid of this, and let's just magic wand this because I'm lazy. I'm also missing. Apologies. Get the four corners, invert the four corners. There's my circle. What we could do. What could we do? Let's just do a yellow stroke. No, because that won't even appear. Let's just do a nice white one. and then we'll go stroke, we'll go center, and then we'll export that out with that little white circle around it. So I'll do, and I'll just call it white. Because I'm not going to use these, so I'm not really worried about the file names at the moment. It's just more to kind of show you. And there's that, so there's that white circle. So just experiment on how you want the actual things to appear on the page. That looks ugly, so I'm just going to get rid of it. I'm not really a fan of the cut, but it could work if there's 3 of them. I don't know. It might look neat, but it's not really appealing to me, so I'm going to stick with the circle. It also means I'm going to delete some images. So because I've got my site manager set up, I can go in here and I can, here's my fancy image. I can go and edit and delete. Why is it saying it's... Oh, because I haven't saved it. Haha, so Dreamweaver thinks I'm using it because I've got a little asterisk there, which means I haven't saved the page. So I'll just save it. Then I'll try and delete it. It still thinks I'm using it. Why? Why? Why does it think that? Interesting. Oh well. That's very strange. But maybe it's just live view, maybe update that. And remember that the fonts don't look normal until you go to live view, but in live view you can't do design changes and you can't really make some stuff there, so you've got to flick between these two. Anyway, so let's see. I definitely am not using fancy and white, so I'm just going to delete those two. So delete. I don't believe it does, so I'm just going to delete anyway. But if I did want to delete this penguin circle or rename it to penguins, let's just say thumbnail, then it wants to update the code. I click update. If I look at the code, you should see that it actually has updated it to say thumbnail. So it takes care of me in that sense. It knows what I'm doing and it doesn't let me kind of make mistakes, which is great. Unless you tell it don't update, then it kind of lets you make mistakes. But anyway, this is it for today. Just wanted you to explore, again, go back to your concept of where you want to take it. What we're probably going to do next is we're going to figure out how to make that second page. And that second page, if you remember, is the internal layout. And that'll have that whole image in the background. So we'll have a play at making that next time. But for now, go into Photoshop, figure out what kind of effect you want to have on your thumbnails. You don't need to have a circle. You can go back to this and you can grab a square and you can just crop it with a square tool. You can make a cool little rectangle. You can do that and say that's what I prefer. I'm going to have these little rectangles. Again, new, clipboard size, whatever that is, paste it in, save it out, and you don't need a PNG for these, so you can actually get away with JPEG, which is awesome because it'll be smaller. And then we can say King Penguins, a rectangle, and then what we'll do in Dreamweaver is go to Design View, swap it out for my rectangle, there it is, and then you can see how those would look next to each other. So the only reason I'm making a circle is because that's what I decided when I was sketching it. You don't have to, but what I want you to do is actually decide, if you're following along, what shape you're going to use on your little thumbnails. The reason I wanted to have circles is so they would have some space and they could kind of have the little lines below them and stand out a bit more. Because we have to still center all of this stuff, and we'll do that eventually. But at the moment, that's a good place to stop. So see how you've gone with all of that, and if it all makes sense, that's fantastic. If you've got questions, please post them down below, and we will get back to you soon. Alright, thanks guys.